be recording. I just wanted to let everybody know that. And I'm going to go to our slides and share my screen so that everyone, I hope, can see that I'm sharing my screen. One moment. Let's see. Is that visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Okay.
Hi, everyone. This is Neela.
Oh, hello, Neela.
Hi. I'm actually in a meeting right now, so I'm going to be on mute, and I will be unable to view the videos, but I am going to still listen in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And this is being recorded, so I'll be able to view later, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and go on mute now.
Okay, no problem. So we'll wait just one more minute just to give people a little time to log in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to the eSEM Network Improvement Community Working Groups, where eSEM stands for Early STEM Engagement for Minority Males through a network of minority-serving institutions. Next slide, please, Cindy. So today, for today's webinar, we'll have on the line myself. Clay Gloucester couldn't join us, but he's one of the principal investigators for the project. Kamal Ali, Derek Gilmore, and Cindy Zeiker will all be here throughout the call. Next, please. So for today, we're going to have a short recap of the efforts of eSEM and to be able to give you an idea of what we've been doing as a group. We'll also give a brief overview of network improvement communities and then talk about next steps for the group, including fishbone diagrams, Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, and then our timeline. So this project is funded through the National Science Foundation under the umbrella of Includes, which is the inclusion across the nation of communities of learners, of underrepresented discoverers in engineering and science. Long name, what exactly does it cover? The goal of the Includes project is to build the STEM workforce from a diverse talent pool. This is the pool of people who are underrepresented in various STEM disciplines, whether it's women in things like engineering and computing or minorities in most STEM disciplines. It also includes people with disabilities as well as people who have a low socioeconomic status. So it encompasses a wide range of people. The approach used with Includes is a social innovation approach that integrates collective impact, network improvement communities, or strategic partnerships that allow us to address social problems in a way in which the impact is much larger than individual projects collaborating. And the mechanism through which includes works in terms of awards funding is through launch pilots, which are about 2-year planning grants, alliances, which are much larger grants that last 5 years and usually involve multiple launch pilots. And then there's a coordination hub that will support the alliances. And they've also funded conferences that would allow others to become part of the network, especially those with NSF funding. Next slide, please. And so what is eSEM? eSEM is a partnership of HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions. There's some who participate that are funders, others that are corporate, experts, researchers, and we're working to build a network improvement community that's focused on minority males. And so we were funded in 2016 through one of the Includes launch pilots that I described earlier, and we're going to be conducting this work until this year, 2018. And the PIs were discussed previously, and our website is listed in case you want to get additional information. Next slide, please. So the initial 4 PIs that started the eSEM project were part of the Verizon Innovative Learning Program for minority males. And this program started in 2015 and has since expanded to about 24 campuses that are listed right here. Our goal with eSEM is to not only include the campuses that are listed here, but to include others who are working with minority males so that we have a large community and we're learning from each other. Next slide, please. So to give you an idea of what has happened with eSEM since 2016, we were awarded our funding in October of 2016. We hosted a workshop in 2017 to build our network improvement community. We also did some work on developing a driver diagram that describes what the group felt were some of the challenges facing minority males and ways in which we could address them. And in 2017, we also hosted some webinars, including one about network improvement communities and the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, which was in November. And a number of our activities are reflected on our website. This year, we submitted an NSF Includes Alliance proposal, and with that proposal, we hope to grow our activities and provide opportunities for others to become more involved and perhaps receive additional funding for the work that they do with eSEM. We also are working on launching our working groups, which is what this call is about. And we'd like to make sure that we have a vibrant community that's working together by the August of 2018. And so in order to be able to ensure this community, we need to work together on problem statements and fishbone diagrams, which will be described later, as well as conducting NIC improvement cycles. And this will involve data collection, selecting a problem that we would like to work on, and identifying ways in which we can address the problem. Next slide, please. And so this graphic provides you with an overview of what a network improvement community is. It functions almost like a scientific learning community. So at the core is a problem of practice, which in our case is focused around STEM achievement for minority males. And then that problem is investigated using improvement science research methods and integrating a theory of practice that addresses this particular problem. And using measurements and analytics, we're able to go through small cycles to be able to determine what's happening with this particular problem and if we're able to improve it. And so there's a network infrastructure that supports this, and there are also norms that develop as part of this process. Next slide, please. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cindy Zeiker, who serves as our mini backbone, kind of the glue that holds the program together. And she's going to walk us through some more aspects of our project and the group.
Thank you very much, Kemi. So what we're looking at is a product that was produced at our Baltimore workshop last May, when our stakeholders came together to discuss how we can look at our aim, improving STEM outcomes for middle school minority males, and what are some of the drivers and secondary drivers that can impact that. And also, we discussed and brainstormed some change ideas that we thought might be useful in addressing this problem. We took that information and broke it out into 4 working groups that are focused on mentoring, family engagement, STEM self-efficacy and personal development, and STEM content. And as you can see from this slide, these all are geared towards still improving our aim of STEM outcomes for middle school minority males. At the top of this slide, you see that our next step is to create problem statements and develop fishbone diagrams, and to conduct NIC improvement cycles that include data collection. So as Kemi just mentioned, there are processes in improvement science that we can leverage in order to implement those 2 activities. And I'm going to show some examples for our working groups in a few moments that initiated from the Carnegie Foundation. So as I discuss this, the first thing our working groups need to come up with are purpose statements. And in a purpose statement, you explain the problem that your working group will be working on and would like to address. And there's questions that we can use to figure this out. And the questions include, what are some of the challenges that can be improved? And can this be quantified in terms of data collection and measures that show if we're making a difference? We also want to know, who are we addressing, how are we addressing it, what, where, and why are we addressing it? And as we work, we want to refine our process through a root cause analysis that will help us determine a theory of improvement. So this is an overview slide that was created to show our working groups and how they're supported. As you can see, mentoring is supported by Kentucky State University and focuses on growth mindset, personal development, and interest in STEM careers. Self-efficacy and personal development are focused on by North Carolina, A&T University, and those topics include peer relationships, student resilience, and educator strategies. The Working Group for Family Engagement is led by Morgan State and includes topics such as family support, STEM stereotypes, and parental STEM awareness. And the Working Group focused on STEM content is led by Jackson State and targets such topics as mathematics preparation, access to STEM equipment, and contributions of minorities to STEM. Our working group leaders, who I hope are all on the call today, include Dr. Derek Gilmore from Kentucky State for mentoring, Dr. Kemi Ladji-Ozias from Morgan State regarding family engagement, Dr. Clay Gloucester, Jr. from North Carolina A&T, who's leading the STEM Self-Efficacy and Personal Development Working Group, and Drs. Kamal Ali and Tamika Bradley from Jackson State University, who are focusing on the working group entitled STEM Content. Eric, are you on the phone? I'm not sure if Dr. Gilmore is with us. Kemi, do you want to take his slide?
Sure, I can go ahead and discuss his slide. So one of the areas in which we're particularly interested in is around mentoring. And with the Verizon Innovative Learning Project, we've integrated mentoring as a core of the effort. And research has shown, and we have seen as well, that as we focus on concepts like growth mindset with students, we see positive impacts on decision-making, academic performance, resilience, etc. And so resources are available for mentors who would like to adopt this with their programs. And with this working group, the goal is to examine mentoring strategies that promote growth mindset amongst participants in programs or students, strategies that promote personal development, as well as things that promote interest in STEM careers that would happen outside of the classroom. So a number of the programs that are participating in the NIC are programs that are working independent of the classroom, and so this mentoring working group is particularly focused on that.
Okay, thank you so much. So is Dr. Gloucester on the phone?
So Dr. Gloucester had a family emergency, but for the self-efficacy and personal development, we know from the literature that both science identity and self-efficacy can influence the pursuit of careers in STEM for minority students, even in the presence of other science support activities like research or programs where they're embedded with scientists, etc. And so there are a number of scales that have been developed to examine both educators' perspectives about self-efficacy, as well as in middle school students and in high school and college students as well, and are used to measure and determine the role of self-efficacy on the pursuit of STEM activities and career choices. And so with this working group, the goal is to examine strategies that will promote educators encouraging increased self-efficacy for students, as well as developing peer relationships and increasing student resilience. And the working group on family engagement is the working group that I will lead. And in this working group, we're going to go with the knowledge that parental involvement can have a strong positive impact on students' academic achievement as well as their career choices. However, knowledge of some STEM fields, including computing and engineering, or even sometimes mathematics, the career options are not always obvious to families and could negatively impact student pursuit of those career choices. And so within this working group, we're going to explore ways in which we can increase parental awareness and provide family support. And so we have participants at HBCUs as well as Hispanic serving institutions, and so that would hopefully provide some interesting dynamics to look at. And we'll also look at how we can address STEM stereotypes with students. And so in general, for these working groups, we're going to ensure that the interests of the group members will dictate the direction that the group works in.
And so for our STEM content working group, I believe Dr. Kamal Ali is occupied today, but Tamika, would you like to take this?
Sure. So with just a little background, as we know, the middle school time is a significant transitional time for students and their content interests in pursuit of STEM careers. And this is particularly strong in minority males. And just a collective look at what the research says, we found that student interest in STEM areas tend to decline in middle school, as does student interest in math. And we found that more current research has shown that when we make mathematics relevant to our populations and make it more interesting, students tend to perform or it enhances their performance in these particular areas. And so our work group wants to build on that interest and relevance of mathematics and STEM content in this particular population, and we want to do so by identifying or developing and creating a repository of informal learning experiences in STEM, and potentially, depending on the direction and input from the group, potentially translate these informal learning experiences to more formal settings or school settings. We also want to try to identify strategies or mechanisms to increase access to STEM technology and resources. And so we want to have a group that will be able to contribute ideas on how we can go about doing that. And the last component of our work group is to create a resource through our eSEM website of minorities making contributions in STEM, be it STEM innovation or sustained work. We want to have our population see current and historical scientists that look like them on our website, be it regionally, locally, or nationally or internationally. So those are the aims of our particular working group in STEM content.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to transition now and let Dr. Ladaji Ozias just talk a little bit about our next steps for our working groups and what the resources are that we would like to provide to our working groups.
Sure, and thank you, Dr. Zeiker. And before we do that, I would like to take a couple of minutes to see if we have any feedback from our participants on the ideas we've shared about the working groups or anything that catches you immediately before we start talking about the resources that we're going to provide. And so you're welcome to do that on the call if you're connected directly, or also you can type something in the chat window as well if you'd like.
I don't know whether I can be heard. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, excellent. I am Eris Winger from the DDLP Includes Building on Strengths, and we are building a Mathematicians of Color Alliance. And so, Tamika, we would definitely want to help out. You said a lot of stuff that we're definitely interested in. We have, in our vision, a space of storytelling, and a space of a web space where we do tell those stories. It is specifically in our mission to tell the stories. Storytelling is big in our mission to make it possible, to make it visible and true that we as mathematicians of color exist for people to see for the rest of time. So, that, in addition to, there's some other things that we're working on in terms of making mathematics relevant towards populations that have often been marginalized. So it was that, but then I was also interested in the mentoring aspect as well. But we're also within Tamika's area definitely interests us on this side.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have anything that immediately comes out? Okay, so now I'll talk about the resources for working groups. As you saw in the previous slides, we have leaders who've been assigned to each of the working groups, and each of the leaders will facilitate contact with you. And some of you have already indicated an interest in a primary working group that you would like to be affiliated with. But we'll also share the information more broadly so that if you have overlapping interests, you're able to participate in more than one working group. Dr. Zyka is going to provide technical assistance to the working groups, and she has a lot of expertise with network improvement communities, and so she's facilitated this for other groups as well. In the short term, we're going to add some templates to our website, and these templates will allow us to conduct some of the activities that normally occur with network improvement communities. And so that would include things like a fishbone diagram, which Dr. Zyka would talk through in a few minutes. We're also going to provide things that will illustrate the kind of measurements that can be used with network improvement communities, as well as a planning sheet for a Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. With the funding from the National Science Foundation, we do have some funds that are available to support the activities of each of the working groups. And so if there are particular things that are needed to support these efforts at some of the sites, we're able to do that as well. Next slide, please.
So I think I'll take it from here. Thank you, Dr. Latagiozius. In regard to that, I think we'll come back to questions, if there are any, on the slide that we just went over. And I'm going to give an example of some of the resources that working groups will have access to. So we'll still have time for questions at the end if there are any. And what we're going to look at next is some examples of resources that will be used by working groups in terms of developing problem statements and fishbone diagrams. And these will be on our website this week. So what you're looking at is a template for a fishbone diagram and a completed fishbone diagram. And as you can see in this slide, the problem statement is over on the right for the right side of the screen. This is developed within the working group and with consensus of the working group members. And across the top you see there are some root causes to this problem. So I'm going to walk us through how do we develop this kind of a fishbone diagram and how do we complete such a template. So to start off, each working group is expected to create a problem statement. And a problem statement is developed through an activity that helps individuals define a problem by developing a focused problem statement. The focused problem statement comprises the head of the fish in the fishbone diagram. Whereas the fishbone diagram itself, that activity is used to identify and categorize root causes. The root causes and subcauses comprise the key factors that make up each major bone of the fish in the fishbone diagram. So how do we start? In the first activity, to create a focused problem statement, the working group members brainstorm problems, and we encourage the leaders of each working group to have their participants think about 1 to 3 problems that they have experienced associated with the topic of their working group. And each problem should be written on a sticky note or documented in the chat if this is done virtually, but somehow we need to have each working group member participate and contribute to this brainstorming activity. And in the second step, they share the group problems, they share the problems with the group. So the working group leader would solicit volunteers to read each of their problems out loud and have the participants put these problems into general categories, such as a lack of knowledge or best strategies. And if participants note that a problem could relate to more than one general category, then the working group leader would encourage them to attach each problem to its dominant category, which would characterize it most centrally. So we can see that this is a brainstorming and categorization activity regarding focused problem statements. And finally, with discussion within the working group, participants would work together to draft a focused problem statement for each category. And with consensus, read the drafted problem statements out loud and see if there are any revisions necessary. And then we use this individual problem statement to add into the fishbone diagram. So let me go back a couple of slides to show you where that actually resides. One more time, this is where the finalized problem statement is entered in the template. So how do we complete the fishbone diagram? The goal of creating a fishbone diagram is to determine the root causes of the problems that we defined in our problem statement. A root cause is the reason why the problem occurs, and it's revealed after several iterations of asking why a problem phenomena exists. If we have a large group, we get many perspectives on why the problem might exist. And this is very helpful to have different perspectives from parents, students, community members, business and industry partners. This gives us a full perspective of why the problem might exist from different stakeholders. How do we do the next step? First, we write out the general problem statement developed during Activity 1 as the head of the fish, and then we engage in discussions within our working group regarding the root causes, using the ideas from Activity 1 to think about what could be the root causes and sub-causes associated with the large problem statement. Participants should ask, why does this happen for each of the sub-problems, and complete the fishbone diagram with these answers. We're focused on causes and not solutions at this point. So as you can see in this illustration, if the problem is preparation for college and career readiness, one of the issues that might be causing this problem is a lack of teacher professional development. And that's in this top box right here as a root cause. And what are some sub-causes for lack of teacher professional development? One might be lack of instructional materials designed to make a connection to college and career readiness. Another sub-cause might be development of programs for teachers, having a lack of access to such programs, or awareness of how to prepare students with standards that lead to college and career readiness. Another root cause might be resources. There may not be available resources for parents and communities to have opportunities for career and college readiness. There may also not be enough transportation to get accessibility to these resources. There may also not be enough instructional time to provide professional development and resources in this area. So as you can see, the stakeholders that completed this fishbone diagram had an array of root causes and sub-causes that they contributed to create this fishbone diagram. The last activity in this process is to present the root causes and engage in a discussion within the working group about the completion of the fishbone diagram, and possibly vote on which root cause to address and document for the next step in order to make an action plan. So we can see that there were at least 3 to 4 root causes here contributing to this problem statement. But which one do we want to pick to address in an action step? That's a decision the working group members need to discuss and come up with. And once that's decided and the fishbone diagram has been completed in all of these boxes and bones, then we can move to the next step, which would be the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. And so we have a template for that. We have a set of slides to help working groups discuss and learn more about how to implement a Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. But I just wanted to go through this particular deck for you today so you could see the kinds of resources that working groups will have available to them and ways that we can provide technical assistance to the working groups to help them with facilitation of these activities. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Lattigiosius.
Hi. So in terms of the timeline for the working group, we're hoping that you're able to have a couple of meetings. One meeting is to define the purpose, what you would like the working group to focus on, and complete a fishbone diagram. And in order to ensure maximum participation, within the next couple of days, you'll be contacted by the lead for your working group to find out your availability and interest in working on this and being able to look at the root causes of different things we've talked about, whether it's how mentoring impacts students' self-efficacy or growth mindset, or whether it's how parental involvement in STEM can produce more positive outcomes. And once you've completed your fishbone diagram, we would want you to start planning for a Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, which would be an improvement cycle for you to be able to go back and look at what you thought were some of the root causes for whatever the problem you decided the problem the group wants to work on is, and then be able to select who your target population that you'd like to work with. So for example, if you have an informal learning program in the summer, would you like to do something for your instructor, something that targets your students, something that targets your mentors, or if you have a different kind of program, perhaps you're working with a school district on teacher professional development, maybe this is something that you'd like to work on during the academic year. But either way, some planning has to occur for this Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, and then this cycle can then be run either in the summer or starting in August or whenever the schools start in your area. And so we're hoping that now, like right now, we can start to have another conversation about what the interest looks like in participating in these working groups, or if there are questions about the time commitment, nature of the commitment, etc., so that we can ensure we get off to a good start. So I'll open it up for questions again or comments.
Hello, this is Sotsuvile. I have a quick question in terms of the timeline. We have said that I see May 10th is the first timeline. I was just wondering in terms of other campuses, I know we are entering the final and graduation cycle weeks. Will that impact our timelines? Or that would depend on the requirements for the time commitment?
So each working group will have the option to be able to pick what timeline works for them. This is the recommended timeline, but we are also aware that for faculty it's closing in on the end of the semester, so which may be good or bad depending on what your responsibility is within that process. And so, for example, if you're a chair and you have to clear students for graduation, and this timeline is too compressed for you, then within your working group, you'll be able to discuss what a more appropriate timeline is. So this is kind of a recommendation or a guide so that if you want to have something that you implement in your program in the summer, you're able to do that. But otherwise, if this timeline doesn't work for you, there's flexibility.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. That's okay.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Yeah, so we at the with the building on strength, so I'm just trying to figure out the mechanisms under which we bring in our partners and our resources to interact with the goals that you all have as well, right? So that I can imagine when we're working with Tamika and we start coming up with things, it would make sense that I'll say, oh, well, we're doing this, right? And so just trying to figure out how does collaboration look like? How do we document it? How do we make it something that's, you know, formal or is it not formal and we just bring whatever we got to the table to make this work, or?
So I think that one of the things that happens within the NIC is the ability for people to find a problem that can be worked on in your different environments. And so let's say, for example, your group has developed a particular idea or approach of working through mathematics. So, for example, in conversations with you, I know that there's this idea of solving problems side by side. And so if you have that kind of idea or that kind of resource where you have a way in which an expert can solve problems beside a novice or an instructor to help them improve their skill but also impact other things, that could be something that the group could look at if it's determined that their resource, like one of the resources missing is a natural way for solving problems, for example, or an intuitive way. And so then it could be that you are trying this in your environment that's maybe high school students, but then a similar type of concept could maybe also work in middle school. So part of the conversation might be, how would you be able to assess this in a quick way? And so with the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycles, the way in which you assess might be after each problem-solving session, the participants and the experts, or the novice and the experts, each have different ways in which they reflect just based on the sticky notes, either about how they felt about the session or how encouraged they are to continue to solve math problems in the future. And so it's kind of resource sharing, but also conversations about what's the real problem that we're trying to address and how can we address that problem.
Thank you.
Does that kind of help answer your question?
It does. It does, yeah.
Okay.
I would add, I wish we had more time today, but in the workshop that we have a slide deck for on the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, that whole method of improvement really helps us look at how did we do when we implemented our interventions, let's say it's around math problem solving, and how can we improve that process of implementation to do better, even more improved the next time. Or, as Kemi was saying, taking it from one population setting in high school and modifying it and making it work for another population by scaling it to middle school. So the PDSA cycle really helps determine what works and how it could be improved. So I hope those resources will be helpful to other DDLPs that are doing this, and hopefully working together we'll find a way to improve the whole PDSA cycle process to make it more relevant to our working groups.
Right. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? No?
So I was just going to give a plug for the Carnegie Foundation and for the work that they do in this area around network improvement communities and the resources that they use. We are really thankful for some of their insights that we have been able to apply, but we know other people are doing other things that are really interesting as well. So if you have resources or templates or other kinds of contributions you think the working groups would benefit from, please let us know, and we'll try to get those up on our website as well.
Okay. So I think at this point we're ready for the next steps, which is us making sure we have a good understanding of what your interests are in terms of the working groups, as well as being able to schedule a follow-up meeting within the next couple of days for us to be able to say this is what we would like to start thinking about and brainstorming in terms of problems and working through the root cause on the fishbone. I'll open it up one last time for questions before we sign off. Okay, well, silence is good for me because it means you're processing or we've answered all your questions. And so we look forward to working together with you over the coming weeks to be able to work through this, the working groups, and to be able to build our understanding in each of these areas. And we'll be sharing a link as well with once the recording is available, as well as once the resources are posted online. So Dr. Zeiker, Dr. Bradley, thank you once again for your feedback and input that you've provided on this webinar. And with this, I say thank you and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.